Hey everybody, welcome to the Velocity Partners Group studio for another episode of the Patty G Show. This week we are joined by Matt from Civilized AI. We talk all things technology, all things governmental practices, and most importantly, efficiencies. So sit back and enjoy the show, brought to you by our wonderful partners in the community, Valaya Real Estate, Lakeman's Health Center, PB&J Productions, and Velocity Partners Group. Enjoy the show.
It's very interesting because, straight up in business, it's a lot more simple because people are, at the end of the day, everybody kind of wants your money and they want to make a profit, which is fine. We all know it's part of it. It's part of it. Like, we all know that. But when you get into politics and when you get into government, the incentives are very different, right? Business itself is much more transactional, much more apparent. It's much faster. And you get, if you don't do a good job, your customers can teach you a lesson. They can fire you,
Or just straight up withhold payment.
Oh, God. Right. That's the worst.
Even worse. You're still doing the work, but they're just not paying you.
They're just not paying you, So, that's like that's the harshest form of punishment there. And so, but like in the politics, so somebody gets elected. It's a popularity contest. They get maybe 2, 4, 6 years out, depending. They get one more popularity contest, or maybe they're not term limited and they can run. But that's really different from did they get the work done? Like, they campaign on stuff, but there's no actual accountability. Like, usually they don't have numbers. They didn't, very rarely do they promise hard numbers or hard facts, and then they don't get evaluated on it. And then inside the government, who's angling because they want to actually work on somebody else? They want to work with a different politician. Why are they refusing to do this or that? What's going on? Who needs to help the other person that's going to give them the ladder they need to get to where they want to go? That's non-monetary, right? So what are the allegiances? Why are they there? How do people work? It's sort of, I'm learning the hard way, if you will.
you're figuring out it from the back, from the behind the scenes efforts.
Exactly.
It's like how it actually runs. Exactly.
Because honestly, everybody thinks they've got a great idea. So if you don't help somebody else's great idea, why are they going to help yours? So there is this natural give and take. I think that's what the framers of the Constitution were hoping for in the Congress. Like, everybody's got to actually, I have to do some of you and you do some of me, and we'll get to a bargain where we all can move things forward the way we see. Mm-hmm. And that's there, but it's under the surface. It's sub rosa enough that you don't know why, and people won't necessarily tell you things. And we did work with the Louisiana legislature here to push forward the digital media tax credit. And one of the things that, helped draw software companies here and game companies, it's really great. But one of the things that happened was we were getting a lot of opposition on the bill. This is back in 2005. We didn't know why there was opposition, and people complain about lobbyists and whatnot. We had on our team, we didn't know what was going on. Well, it turned out one of the senators in the committee felt like one of the people on the team on a totally different deal had misrepresented what was going to happen and set them up for failure. And the person in the committee was furious.
Wait, like a totally different item?
Totally different item.
Like not related to this.
But so we're saying, hey, we're going to run this, like this is how all the things we're doing. And they're like, I don't trust this person at all. But they didn't want to say it in open meetings in the committee. Mm-hmm. They're not going to go on
this
record.
Idea.
Yeah, they're like, I'm worried about this. They would say it a little bit, but we ended up adding a different lobbyist who basically called, and the person laid out all their reasonable concerns. They weren't going to say it to us when it was in a recorded forum where it was political. They were just like, you need to fix this. I'm worried about this. So make sure that the costs aren't going to be overrun. Make sure people aren't double dipping and taking all these tax credits. Like, do it a certain way, and then I'm fine with it. We're like, great. So then we proposed they proposed the amendments, we put it out, and it all ended up, we thought none of it was going to get passed, and this tax credit gets passed unanimously. But while we're in the negotiations at first, Governor Blanco, who I think, who ended up doing a great job with the tax credit, but first she was opposed to it. At least that's what we're hearing, unless we do this or that. Okay, fine. The governor, we don't want to be vetoed. Right. And then later, Governor Blanco signed it. It passed unanimously, both houses. The governor signed it. We're like, great, you can have all the credit. That's sort of the nature of the thing. But we didn't know why. It was like, well, how do things move forward? Well, it turned out people in Baton Rouge wanted it. And we got a big, Electronic Arts they set up a big game testing studio here, and the LSU was feeding people into that business. And then Lafayette wanted to do tech. and Shreveport wanted stuff. And so it turned out a lot of places in the state wanted it. So how do you build a coalition, and how do you help everybody, and how, like, these are all, it's much more nuanced. In business, you're kind of like, hey, you're my customer. Like, I want to help you. You give me some money and I'll do something for you.
But even then, like in business, you've got the behind the scenes email chains before you have the Zoom meeting of today or the board meeting of then, where it was like the board meeting, everybody came, they had their decks, they had their presentations. It was very polished and trim. And I feel like that was the council meetings or the public meetings. And then before all of that, you had the emails back and forth. What's your real concern? What's this? What's that? Same thing like with politics is behind the door. The lobbyists are like, hey, what do you really want in this thing? How do we really do this? What are you after? And then it's okay, let me go bring over to, and it's all this back and forth to then when we see it in public, it's like, oh, well, that was simple. Why can't all that happen?
The decisions are already made. I think there's somebody called it the Japanese system, which is, I've had people say this is a horrible idea. You should show up in the meeting and then have all the contentious fighting then, which is a terrible idea. Because like everybody, if it's a larger group, the idea, a problem will run away from you faster than you can address somebody's concern. All of a sudden, things are blown up over nothing. If you just had a chance to meet somebody's needs and explain why, how you're handling that or what changes you'll make, then you could get stuff done. But yeah, if doing it all in the meeting in front of people, it ends up being problematic. Of course, then we create laws saying, hey, but the council people can't meet outside of the meetings because that's bad.
That's bad.
So then they cannot actually get together and meet. There's a whatever, it's like a reverse quorum. Like once they show up at some point, like then they're under regulation. And so that you can't just have casual conversation. So then it's funny. I'm like, was that for the people or was that for the lobbyists? Now that I think about it, because the lobbyists then have to fill the gap.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? People who are not politicians have to be the in-betweens. I mean, you go back and you're wondering like, wait, like, how did that originate? It's not unlike
it originated because they said, look, we'll keep getting paid more, so you don't have to talk to the other person.
We're a buffer.
You can give me all your dirty laundry. Give it all to me. I'll clean it. I'll polish it. I'll steam it. I'll iron it. And then I'll bring it to them as a pressed piece of clothing and say, here's what they want.
Here's what they want. This is it. And it's packaged. Yeah. It saves everybody work. The lobbyists make money. But lobby is also essential because there's so many different issues. Like when you really get into how complicated everything is.
There's so many issues on single transactions.
Yeah. It's tough. And so we go back and New Orleans, there's a lot of regulation of energy and what's going on, but the depths of power regulation and what that is a complicated, that's a whole career just in that one thing, much less how do you deal with the water? How do you deal with the roads? Like you start getting into this, all the politicians have to be generalists.
Yeah.
They can't
dive into the biggest question. How do we solve trash?
Oh God. Well, we solved it in New Orleans
outside of giving envelopes to the drivers.
Oh God, I know. Well, I was, one of the early ideas I had with the government stuff was just a simple thing. It was like a parade tracker, like in New Orleans. You can see where the floats are. You can track a parade. Like, let's do that with the garbage trucks. And I was like, great. Well, everybody will get a text like 10 minutes before the garbage comes in case you forgot to put out your trash. You can get notified and do that. And then I was like, what about doing tips for the garbage men? And they were like, this is illegal. I was like, wait,
is it?
Do this? Well, yeah, I think because then you might.
Well, I guess are they a government worker?
Well, yeah,
so then you're bribing or tipping
you're setting it up like maybe they won't do the work unless you tip it. I think there's a lot of ways it could be abused.
Setting it up that way.
And you might be like, hey, dear garbage truck person or garbage person, like, here's my uranium. Here's $100 bill and a kilogram of uranium. Like, do I take this to the landfill? Like, they're like, there's a lot of other, it's problematic when I think a lot of people feel like they'd like to have a Christmas gift for people, that have been coming and regularly doing stuff for them. But it's very funny. Like, well, what have people done to abuse the system? And I think the answer is everything you can imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And everything you can possibly think of. Someone's already done it.
Yeah. They've already done it. Like, we're at that level of like, okay, now, but nobody remembers even necessarily the why. Like a lot of people don't even know why things are set up a certain way. And it's like, well, 70 years ago, people were causing all kinds of problems.
Well, and that also translates to your business world of systems and processes and operations. It's okay. Well, hang on. Why do we, like the story of like the ham or whatever it was, where they cut off both sides, the front end and the back end of like this roast. And they're like, well, why did we do that? I don't know. My grandmother always did that.
Yeah, I have no idea.
And then it's like, okay, within the fourth generation, They're like, oh yeah, you cut off this side, you cut off this side. And I'm like, well, why does that happen? Because I don't know. And you go ask the great grandmother, why did you do this? Oh, well, my pot was only this big. That's all I could fit. It's like, okay, so there's really no real reason to do this process. It was legacy. Just, why do we still use paper checks? Oh, well, because we couldn't afford a printer back then. That's why we have this whole line of years of the business only doing paper handwritten checks because we didn't have a printer.
It's hilarious.
Okay, let's adapt. Let's evolve.
Well, in a sense, the governments are all antiques. They're 100 years old, multiple 100 years old. Like everything is a legacy process that was done to solve a problem back in the day, and it just lasts until somebody decides to modernize.
Yeah,
it's also strange, and you wonder, like, we have the civil service in New Orleans. Most places have it, and it protects a lot of workers. And a lot of people advocate for it because it protects workers from patronage. But I didn't know. I started research. I was like, how did this end up happening? Well, President Garfield was assassinated by a follower, but it was on his team because he didn't give that person using the spoils system a job. And so that person gets mad and assassinates the president. So then we pass laws to protect the politicians from their own supporters. That's how we end up in the civil service. It was not to protect the workers from the politicians coming after them and putting unqualified people in place. It was the other way. It was to protect the politicians from their own supporters not getting a job. It's very weird. So we end up in this system where now we elect politicians that can't actually control their workforce.
Yeah.
Which is very bizarre. We hold a popularity contest. For the president, now you hold a popularity contest. The president wins. The president doesn't really have control of the workforce. By and large, they're protected from whoever that is. And then they have won a re-election and then they're out. So all the lifetime workers, they're protected past this. And it's not clear that this was, like, it was done for certain reasons, but it's not clear this is the best way to run things now. There's other ways to do it. And so, how do you go about that? It's very complicated, but the knowledge is old. It's like, well, we're doing it this way because great grandfather from 1880 wanted to pass a law in 1890, and this is what we have.
Yeah, it's all based on us not taking the time to ask the why questions. It's just like we're given a system and we say, okay, got it. That's just the rules. It's sandbox. Is how we got to play. We'll get to it. Instead of somebody coming in and challenging like what you're doing is like, well, why are we doing it this way? Why have we not progressed past X, Y, and Z?
Right. And what New Orleans looked like in 2010, I started asking the why questions, and I was not intending to do anything with the government. So I was sort of helping the mayor, Mitch Landrieu, at the time, going through all the tech stuff. And so I was also running a company, and I was so busy, but I was like, we've got to help everything. We just had Ray Nagin as mayor. Nobody knew what was going on. So we're diving in. And I'm just asking the why question, and everything was it was a loop. It was like this entanglement of like, we do this because we did that, and we do that because of this other thing. And it was just all these circular problems where nobody knew exactly why things had happened. And for me, I was, I think, way more brash than I should have been, because I think it made people scared for their jobs. You know what I mean? Like, because they're worried there's a new mayor coming in. I just wanted to know, like, where are the contracts? What are we obligated to?
Yeah,
where's the system?
How do we plan a budget if we don't know what the contracts are?
Right. How do you plan the budget? Well, there was a system where they would walk the contracts around, like to get them approved, but it was all by walking around the office and doing that. I'm like, great. Where are they stored? And they're like, well, I don't know. I'm like, well, what happens when you actually walk the contract? Well, it goes to whoever, and then it goes to this other person, and then I'm not sure they're supposed to store it in a filing cabinet. Where's the cabinet? I don't know. Who's the person? Well, I asked that person. They're like, oh, I don't store the contracts. That's supposed to be stored by legal. And I asked the legal, and they're like, no, it's this other group that's supposed to store the contracts. We're like, wait, so they're getting signed and just left somewhere, and nobody knows where they are.
Then you open this one room, and it's like the contract room of like, everything's they just throw it on the desk.
Well, so I finally go open that door, and in the room is all of these PCs, and they all have barcodes that look very official. I'm like, where are the PCs? Like, where's the record of these PCs? And they're like, oh, we actually just print barcodes. There's no system. There's no database. They're like, we don't know what we have. I'm like, how many computers do you have? And they're like, well, we think 1,000. I said, why? And they said, well, because about 1,000 people log into their Windows account every day. But I don't know how many computers we have. Like, oh my God, anybody could walk out.
And you don't know if there's 1,000 actual employees or how many people are infiltrating the system a day.
Or who might have been added to the payroll, which is running on a mainframe system. So then you go ask for so I go through the whole contract thing. I'm like, well, how do you go talk to the accountants? How do you pay the contracts? And they said, well, When a contract is, when we receive an invoice, if we paid it before in the accounting system, then we pay it again.
No.
Yeah. They're like, we have no idea what we're obligated to.
No.
Totally. So Mayor Landrieu is extremely smart and capable mayor. I mean, right, born into the job. He's like the Peyton Manning of mayors, where his parents, his dad was very effective and he was raised into this position. And he was like, Matt, I want you to tell all the stories about everything that was wrong with it, but you can't tell anybody that we have no idea what equipment we own. Because it'll all just walk out if people find that out. And you can't tell people that if they keep sending us invoices forever, we'll keep paying it. He's like, you can't say that. I'm like, okay. But otherwise, it was just crazy. But so they're coming through all the systems. So which ones were put in there because they could be abused? We don't know. Who decided to put barcodes that went nowhere on all the gear? Well, of course, if I'm walking out with a box with a PC, and by the way, the overwhelming majority of people are just trying to do a job and trying to live a good life and help people as part of the government. But if you walked out with a PC that had a big barcode on it, said, okay, I'm taking this to work from home. Well, that was your computer.
Yeah. And who was going to know to ask you to bring it back?
Ever. Nobody. There was no way to check the computer out. There was no way to know where it went. There was nothing. And so you wonder, what happened with that? They're running an accounting system from the 1980s at the time on a mainframe computer. But the mainframe computer was really, we're only 15 years out from this. The mainframe computer had a 1980s accounting system. Now to run it it was running on a PC that had 2 hard drives and that were mirrored. And if they went, great, what happens if
they both go out?
What happens if they both go out? They said, well, we have a 24/7 hardware contract. It'll be fixed within whatever time grid. And I said, okay, well,
but the
all
data.
Right. Well, where's the data? And they said, well, the data's we back it up to the hard drives on the computer. I'm like, wait, you're backing up to the same computer that has that if it dies, well, that's where the backups are. I'm like, where are the install CDs? And they're like, well, we don't know. I said, it was imagine it's like 2010. I was like asking somebody, well, where's the Windows, the Office 9, they didn't even call it 1985 at the time, but they didn't know where the Windows
the Windows software,
or whatever the CDs, couldn't. But but we would have a computer that has nothing on it. That's what you have a contract for.
Yeah.
But who approved this?
But do you have, or you're supposed to have a contract for
they
this?
They'd give you a fresh computer that had 2 hard drives on it, but it wouldn't, you couldn't put the software on it.
They probably weren't upselling anything. They were just like, well, you got this contract. We're just going to keep giving you the same thing over and over. Yeah. This is what you ordered.
This is what you ordered. You didn't ask for the thing that you really need. And this is another thing that's so crazy. So many of the government systems, they make a lot of people want to sell the government something, and then they actually want to price it under the value. At least this is what people who actually were selling the government explained to me. They want to price it under even their cost because they're happy to let the government put change order after change order after change order. That's their margin. Your profit equals how much you let somebody customize stuff. And so from that point of view, it makes it hard. The software fails. It doesn't work well. And you see all this stuff, people bilk the government. The FBI tried to launch a system. They did the change orders. They had to shut it down. $250 million later, they didn't have a working system and they gave up. It was crazy. And you see this all over. So it's well, the government, if you have people that are not sophisticated about the buyers or people who's making these decisions, you can end up with nothing. You can spend a ton of money.
And time and just wasted. And
you're not really getting the protection. You're paying like you have a Rolls Royce. You think you've got Rolls Royce protection, but you don't even have 4 tires on the thing. You forgot they didn't include the engine.
You got a bike.
You got a bike. Yeah, exactly. That was so funny. So I was explaining to Mitch, it was like, okay, here's kind of the deal. At any second, the payroll system, which is the accounting system, at any second it could go down and you won't be able to pay the police, the fire, your staff, or anybody. There is a set of blank checks sitting there that they can just start writing out checks if they have to handwrite them.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, but currently the system's still working. I'm like, yes. He's like, okay, that's a tier 3 problem. They were in a budget crisis at the time from the Great Recession and all the rest of that. It was just
was it the Great Recession created by contracts that nobody knew what they were obligated to do and just kept paying over years and years and years?
Oh, at some level,
a self-inflicted fiscal scare.
You kind of, I mean, that's basically people didn't check who was liable. It's bad business all the way down. So,
What was it? Facebook paid like how many millions of dollars to a phony corporation because somebody got one invoice through one time, and then they just kept sending this bill every single month because they said, "Well, we'll just send it to them and see if they pay it."
Yeah,
and it was under like a threshold.
This is the numbers game. I mean, the one time I got my computer compromised from a virus, I sent somebody a file, and maybe this was their computer was infected waiting for this, but I sent a file, or I sent them an email saying, "Hey, when are you sending the files?" And I got an email immediately and said, "Here's the files you've been asking for." And it was an exe. I double clicked it, and all of a sudden I had dirty pictures all over my computer. And it was like, wow. I was like, "Oh no!" And you're fighting to rescue your computer, but it's the thing is like, it was the timing. It was from an account I trusted, and the timing was there, and so I didn't think twice. And this is like the same thing. They have all robocallers calling all the old people. My mother kept on, she was starting to have some dementia. She's like, "Matt, I've got an new iPhone coming for $8. I'm like, oh my God. Look at the credit card bill, and it's like porn, cloud software. It's like people who are trying to process stuff. Mm-hmm. They're buying that. I'm like, okay, we're canceling the card again. But people mercilessly send texts, and when she'd see this thing, she'd fall for it. So this opportunistic moment when people can slot in and then take advantage of somebody, it's, honestly, it's a hot war. It's not even like a cold war. The internet is people trying to steal from you all the time. You sort of don't realize that. Like, it's business is war out there. Like, people are trying to take your customers. They'll kill your company in 2 seconds if you can't stand up for yourself. It's very different from people sort of are complaining about there's like an anti-capitalist movement and all this stuff. I'm like, it's so hard to start a business. It's so hard to run a business. Like, there's a lot of sacrifice that happens, and maybe there's some glory at the end of it, but mostly there's a lot of not glory.
There's a lot of trial, tribulation, and just pain.
Raw pain. Like, how do you convince people? It's very hard to convince people to give you their money. They'll say really nice things, but who signs on the dotted line? You learn a lot of hard lessons because you think you have a great idea. People are like, uh-huh. So they're like, "Oh, it's really nice. Oh yeah, of course I'd be a customer." And you're like, "Okay, here's the contract." They're like, "Oh, well, we're doing something else for the next 6 years, and it's not really a good time." It's very interesting. Anyways, you see enough of these cycles, and you get a picture of it. Like, you have to earn your keep. It's hard to do. People have to, like, building a giant business like Starbucks. For all the people, I think he was considered running for president, people got mad, or even Bloomberg. It's like, but you run a real business. Like, you sacrificed to do that. Bloomberg at least had run New York City, which is a small country or a medium-sized country.
Probably a medium-sized country.
Yeah, it's a huge enterprise, a very distinguished executive, whereas we don't always make that choice. I've traveled through China a lot. I've studied it since I was a kid. And one of the questions I got asked by a bunch of Chinese was in a seminar for, like, doing all these old readings. This is in 2015. And they were saying to us, they're like, "So could Donald Trump win?" This is in 2015, and this is December 2015. I said, "Absolutely. It's totally possible." They're like, "We're so confused. Okay, so you run this, you have a democracy, and you're doing this, but you would let somebody who's never worked a day in their life run the largest company, the largest organization in the world with no experience." I was like, "That's our system." And they're like, "We don't want this system." They're like, to run China, you have to have run, like, essentially the New York, like the Shanghai, you have to have run Beijing. You have to have, like,
you got to work your way up.
Yeah, exactly. You've been great at a village. The rice farmers love you. And you've been like, they had a totally different point of view. And so it's very interesting to hear them say, like, they're run by engineers overwhelmingly. We're run by lawyers.
Yeah.
Overwhelmingly, lawyers do that. And like, you could argue, say what you want to say.
Because they're the only ones that know how to write and understand what they write.
Well, that's the idea. And they make sure that the things they write are only understood because they're in the format of back to how many 100 years back did we set this up?
Yeah.
And they know how to speak the ancient tongue of legalese. And it's written that way. And it's fine. But lawyers aren't known for being productive. I say this only because everybody in my family is either a lawyer or married to one. So I love you all. God bless you all.
Lawyers are great. We love them all.
But lawyers add friction to process. They heighten risk. They focus on risk. They focus on the downside. And I understand, that's very important. When it really matters, it matters, and all of that. And I tease, but engineers are like, "We're going to get this thing done. Mm-hmm. We're going to build this thing fast. We're going to build the road. Like, we're going to do that." And so we're in, like, different systems, and ours works and theirs work. They're very different systems.
Yeah. See, I married a civil engineer.
See, so what's that like? So, civil engineer. So, I mean, building, What's the situation at your house? Are you building things? What are you doing? Like big projects?
Yeah, well, we got a house renovation.
Right. Okay. See.
So, and I'm the CPA. We've got quite a household dynamic.
You're like the treasurer, and she's the one pushing for all the feature. She's building the features. So, all right. Why? How much are you spending on the marital therapy? Is that
however much bourbon my clients bring me?
Like 3 figures of bourbon, stat, nightly, QED, whatever it is to get through that kind of stuff. Home renovation's tough business.
Yeah, but it's great. So I send her financials every month.
Oh God! Oh, this is great. So
I got her own QuickBooks. Her own QuickBooks profile I've had since before we got married. I've tracked all of every single transaction.
Here's your trending. Here's our, here's your quarterly performance, honey.
No, never do that.
You don't weaponize this. Okay.
Yeah, it's just here are the facts.
Right. You got
see them as they are.
So you're truth teller, which is very good.
That's all I can do.
This is the reality. This is where we are. Honestly, this is the thing I learned in business for a long time. And this came up, actually, I was mentioning earlier, we were talking a little bit. When we were doing the first Turbo Squid, we were doing funding, and the .com crash is happening. And it's day by day, we don't know what's going to happen.
So what is Turbo Squid, by the way?
Oh, so Turbo Squid, thank you, is my previous company. We were, the idea was to make, whereas Amazon wanted to sell everything in the world, we wanted to sell everything that was digital in the world. That was the idea. We started it. I actually started writing the code in 99, started in 2000. We got $5 million in 2001. Intel was an investor, Advantage Capital Partners.
Wait, $5 million in 01?
Yes.
That is an insane amount of money.
It felt like an insane amount of money.
My God.
I promise you.
Do you buy a country with that at that point in time?
It felt like.
You could buy the whole suburban area of Baton Rouge with that.
But it was tough. The thing is, we had this great idea. There'll be all these people on the internet, all this buying and selling, and then the revenue comes in. It's like $200 a month. You're like, uh-oh.
So what was the revenue?
$300 a month. It was consignment. So the idea is we ultimately had 70,000 artists who would make 3D objects. So we knew 3D. We've been in animation and TV commercials and all this kind of stuff. And so we knew what would happen is if somebody did a movie, they would build bridges, they would build spaceships, they'd build whatever it is. We did a TV commercial at the time for all the phones in existence. So inside the computer, we'd built animatable flip phones and everything that you could buy at the time. And then after that, the next job we did, this is in the 90s when we were animators. The next job was we need a Christmas tree that looks like it was made of emerald crystals. So then we had all these cell phones and they didn't do anything. We never used them again. We just kept on building crazy different stuff. And they're all sitting on our hard drive.
So this is all digital.
All digital.
So this is like NFTs before NFTs.
Yes. It's like NFTs. They're like props. They're like what you would decorate a set with. We had this table.
I was about to say, your website, we scrolled, it's an animal, and scroll down a little bit, Jay.
So you can see
that looks like a farming simulator tractor.
The craziest thing about the Turbo Squid business is that people believed they were getting real things all the time.
Wait, they thought they were buying a physical product
all the time. And so I get in these fights with the staff because the staff was like, put a big thing, make them sign a thing that says this is just a digital product. Object. This is a digital product. You're not going to get this. I'm like, guys, everybody, if they didn't notice that we didn't ask for their shipping,
we asked for billing information.
We asked for the billing and here's what your street number, your zip code, they're not going to notice. We don't want to take all of our customers that are actually paying. We don't want to add friction for them, for the people that don't notice this. And so if we put something up, we end up having to build systems where if there was a return or somebody thought it was real, then we would stop and flag them. But we had this yin yang shaped shelves. People would start buying it in the droves. Somebody put it on later on Pinterest. And then all of a sudden we get all these customers thinking it was the best deal in the world. And then we take it offline.
So what happens?
Well, you try and reach out to them. And what they think is that you accidentally priced it low. And now you're trying to weasel out of that price. And so they get angry. You're trying to explain, this is a computer graphic, right? So finally, this is what happened when we'd flag something when this was happening. And it would say, this is not a real item. And you can buy, if you'd like to, here's a Ferrari for $100 or a nuclear missile for $105. You could have those too. We promise you, we're not selling nuclear missiles. we're not selling cars for $100, and this shelf is not real. But we'd put that up because they just would think we were scamming them to avoid having to live up to our mistakes. So tons of iPhones, they buy all this stuff believing they bought something real.
And so what would the use be here?
Well, yeah. So if you could imagine, like, if you want to do a movie, we had stuff in every movie. You've seen it thousands of times. When they do animation, even if it's CG, any CG, they build the object and it's in the computer, and then they render it, they turn it into graphics. Ultimately, everything goes to pixels. But so they would build, like, if we were going to take this area and we were going to make a dragon come through, well, we would also build this in the computer, and then you'd take a computer dragon and then you would move it through here. And then when you process it, well, after in post, you fix it in post, where you'd take the dragon and you'd have it stepping on things inside the computer that were matched. So you'd have a computer table that matches this table, and then you just add the dragon, and it would look photoreal. The shadows would cast where they were, reflections could reflect. That's how you'd sort of do that trick. So for all of the movies, whether it was fully animated, like the Pixar movies, Pixar was a big customer, or whether or not it was done with like a live action, we were the prop department for cyberspace. That's sort of how we try and describe it. So we had everything. You have a million objects. People around the world would sit around and they would build things. And so we saw crazy stuff. People would watch. So we're coming from an artistic background at the time. We're like, okay, we were making TV commercials. We like cool images. We like graphics. But so then the Iraq War breaks out, and all of a sudden our customers change. And then we were like, wait, it was the mother of all bombs was this bomb that got a bunch of news. The next day we had mother of all bombs. We had 5 different kinds of mother of all bombs. We were not used to like the defense industry. We didn't know, the larger world is very different. People were using the stuff for all kinds of things. So people around the world would build all the weaponry, and then people in our defense department would buy it. And we're selling to intelligence agencies worldwide. We're selling to the U.S. government. We're selling to news agencies are buying like weapons so they can show in the over-the-shoulder graphics to show what this missile is. Like, it was so a very broad, different world. It was so strange. I mean, we had the Twin Towers. So when 9/11 happened, somebody came and actually just bought they bought out the entire rights to it. But like, we had just everything, and all of a sudden any crisis in the world, some kind of object would become popular. The Boeing 737 MAX crashes, they start selling, people start buying all over the world. It was just not it was a very unusual experience to see like what's happening. I'm very hands-on. We had 100 people at the company. We had millions of customers and 70,000 people selling. Now I think it's maybe over 100,000. I'm a little disconnected from it. But so I try and find out, people ask questions, and I'd look and I'd answer ones that I wanted. Somebody asked a question about what was licensing like, and I wrote something back, and I was at JFK Airport, and I was watching the show 24, you forgive me, but I was watching Kiefer Sutherland do his thing with the Secret Service and all this kind of stuff going on, and I pick up the phone with this random number, and the guy's like, "Hi, I'm like Bob Langham from U.S. Secret Service." And I was watching. I'm like, "Is this real?
Is this real life?"
I'm like, wait, am I being pranked? Am I even awake? I mean, it was this whole thing, and I'm like, "Hey," and he's like, "I wanted to talk to you about our licensing." And it's like, because we were like, you can't buy, if a brand, you can only do certain fair use. If you're buying a brand, like you can't, if you from Ford, like you would use it for Ford products in a certain way. You can't just abuse that. Anyway, so the person who called was wanting to use this gun. It was a Glock, but it had restrictions on it. And he was sort of asking me questions like, "Hey, where's the line? How do you do this?" And I was like, "Well, what do you want to do with it?" And he's, "Well, I can't tell you." Like, okay, well, all right, well, let me.
Well, then I can't tell you how you can use it.
Oh, no, you gotta guess. So then you're like, okay, well, if you're trying to do things like training, so you're going to teach people how to use the gun just for defense, for protection, whatever. I'm like, yeah, that's totally covered. Because they're customers. They're buying all the machinery. Now they want to train people how to use the stuff that their real customers are. I'm like, that's like fair use, and you're doing it for this purpose. It's different if you try and do, people who got mad at us were the Emmys. Of all the things in the world. So you're in business, we're selling 3D graphics, but it's like Statue of the Emmys. And the problem was,
they wanted a royalty.
Well, yeah, they said actually this is all we have is this show. All of our money is this show.
Don't take it from
us. Yes, and they're like, is it
Don't
possible?
Take it from us.
Totally. They're like, it's all we have, man. We'll go down. They're very nice about it, but they're like, people pretend to have won an Emmy all the time.
They just post them with the Emmy.
So like, this is like not us. We're like, okay, that's fine. We're not, we're not trying to hurt. Like, we get it. Like, that makes total sense. Like, they're non-commercial and they're trying to do that. But so it's very funny, like understanding like people are sensitive about certain things and not things. And so you learn like the world's much more complicated than you'd realize. You just got to talk to people.
Yeah. And figure out a way to come to a solution.
Right. What helps you? What doesn't help? I mean, Ford Motors was really mad at us until I got a call. It was 5 attorneys yelling at me on the phone. And then I'm like, we're your friends. They're like, you're like Napster. You're stealing our stuff, the Ford Mustang and whatnot. We're like, I promise you, everybody that's spending actual money to buy this is somebody who's in your ecosystem. They like Ford cars. And so they were trying to decide whether or not we were like a friend or foe and whether they were going to sue us and all this crazy stuff. And they had this sensation. They did a 3D printed chocolate Mustang that became very popular, got a ton of press. And they said, oh, well, how do we get it? Do we get our CAD data? Like our engineers give it to us. And then people said, no, we got it on Turbo Squid, which is the company. They bought it from us and they printed the chocolate. And they're like, okay, right, we get it now. You're our friend. I'm like, exactly. They're like, your CAD people are never going to give you the actual designs of a Ford Mustang to print a chocolate, dessert item.
Right.
They're going to hide that data.
We're drawing it as best we can.
Exactly. This is a totally different thing. So you learn like, what do people care about? It was really fun. So then we worked with Ford for a while. We did 3D printed the GT, the Ford GT, the beautiful car. And they're like, we need, serial number 1 has to go to Henry Ford III. We label it up. Serial number 1, they gave it to Henry Ford III. It was great. So it's a great partnership. You got to listen. People have needs that are not obvious.
Thank you to our wonderful sponsor, Lake Men's Health Center with Our Lady of the Lake Physicians Group. Guys, I know it's tough to get out and go to the doctor. I know it's challenging to find time in our busy days, but I promise you, signing up to be a part of this group with Dr. Curtis Chastain and Dr. Tyler Boudreau, you won't regret it for several reasons, but most of those being the fact of the time it saves, where you're able to get in on the same day, get that appointment done, and spend that time you need to talk with them about what your health goals and concerns are, as well as ensuring that the financial investments you have, you will be able to live out and see those come to fruition. So if you're an investing guy, you know all about and planning for the future and investing in the future. There's no other more important thing to invest in than your health. Make sure you go check them out, Our Lady of the Lake Physicians Group Men's Health Center, and tell them Patty G sent you.
So you got to talk to them.
So what did you do before Turbo Squid? How did you get into that space?
Well, we were computer graphics kids. We loved. I wrote software to do graphics. We made graphics. We did it all on the Mac. I mean, we were hardcore from the beginning, and we wanted to work in the industry. And so we decided to, in New Orleans, make a graphic studio.
Okay.
And so, like, my partner at the time, business partner, he'd been on the Photoshop beta when it was just. They were replacing like Mac Paint, this like ancient app, and they're like, hey, here's this new idea. He's like, we're replying on like message boards on the, it was like way back when.
Yeah.
The 2 people that owned Photoshop was 2 brothers. One of them went on to do all the visual effects for Star Wars, all this kind of stuff. But so we started doing those graphics, and then we wanted to work at the company. There was no company to do that. So we founded a company, and we were like, 3D is exploding. It's 1993. We're like, this is the last second you could start a company doing this. It turned out it was the first second. This is like the classic entrepreneur mistake where you're like, oh my God, like the world's going to pass us by. And it turns out actually like you're ahead of everybody.
Yeah.
And
it's just coming out.
It's just coming out. And by the way, if you start a company now, you will barely manage to succeed.
Yeah.
And so that was the thing. Like the dot-com boom was so big and it felt like everything was happening so fast. But the reality is we were early. And so we're mentioning for Turbo Squid, like, okay, well, we're doing, the revenue, we raised $5 million, but the revenue is like $200 this month, $300 the next month, $450 the next month. And you're like, okay. I said to everybody after like 3 months, I was like, we just need to grow the company 20,000% to break even. I was like,
really?
Okay. We got $5 million.
Yeah.
And we got to grow 20,000%. But you could see the numbers compounding. And some people were telling us they'll never work. There are not enough people in the world, all this stuff. But actually, I was like, we just got to stick with it. Keep on doing it. And sure enough, the revenue, as we added more things for sale, the revenue kept on going up and up and up. And it was a hockey stick. It was crazy to watch. But I knew we would cross over and be profitable at some point. So we were playing it, but we wrote it tight. You could predict the growth. We wrote it tight. We got down to 1 month's operating expenses on $5 million. And that's when, our revenue is going down. You see, the revenue is going up and the cash balance is going down in a curve. And you're like, will the curve smash into the zero axis? Hit
pull
zero?
Pull up, low terrain, low terrain.
Oh my God. And then it pulls up. You're like, oh, thank God. But there's a long period of time where you're like, when your funeral is. You can see it in the numbers. If we don't fix this, we're going to die.
So what'd you do?
Some of it's faith, and you keep building it. You market, honestly, you have to actually have some amount of denial. This is the funny thing about, like, if you want to be an entrepreneur, maybe if you want to be a politician too, but if you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to be delusional at some level. Like, people are going to like what I'm making. It requires you to have an unreasonable belief that what your idea is good.
You have to at least have faith in yourself. Because if not, nobody else is going to walk in and go, yeah, I immediately trust 1,000% whatever you're doing. I'll buy everything.
You get told no a lot. People don't see it, or they're not ready for it, or you're early. It's all going to happen that way. But at the beginning, it's so funny. We were doing this marketplace and we're testing to see whether dial-up speed, if you could still use the website. People don't want to give credit cards. They don't believe this stuff. When I originally pitched the business in 95, I was like, okay, we're going to sell everything online. The response people had to me was, Matt, that is the dumbest idea I've ever heard. I was like, no, there are these things called MP3 files and people are going to put movies online, and they're going to put music and recipes, and everything's going to be online. And people told me, people I respected, they're like, literally, nobody will ever do that because it'll get pirated. It'll get stolen. There won't be a business. They'll ruin their lives. They'll ruin everything. They're never going to do it. And I sort of tucked my tail between my legs for 4 years and was like, well, I really liked that idea, but everybody said it was really dumb. And I started coding at 99. We got the funding in 2001. And literally, we were at the very first second the idea could survive. So if we'd gotten funding in 1995, we probably would have gotten $20 million, and then we would have had, $10 of revenue a month.
Yeah, but you would have had no customers.
No customers. Nobody was on the internet. There was very light numbers of people on the internet. People weren't willing to put their credit cards out. Like the
credit card game was. Yeah, I remember the credit cards were such a holdback.
Yeah.
It was like, no. Call the company and give them your credit card. Don't type that in.
Oh, right. Exactly.
Don't type that in.
What are you buying?
Why are you buying something? Who are you buying from? No. Call in and order.
Oh God, I know. There's so many stolen credit cards. So we had to build an entire. We honestly, we probably should have spun that business out and made that the company. It was our
the payment processor.
The payment processor was so good. Oh yeah, totally missed it along the way. I'm very happy with the success we had, but along the way,
Elon took that over. Unfortunately.
Yeah. The PayPal. Well, they sold it. PayPal was a shadow of what it could have been. PayPal would have been the digital store of money around the world before crypto. If Elon had kept it, it'd be $1 trillion company, no question. But instead, they just used it to buy up all the other credit card processes, which was kind of a sad day. Like, all roads lead to PayPal with the credit cards because they just sat around and bought it up. But yeah, so we built all this fraud stuff. So at first, I would call people who had credit cards that were stolen personally and say, "Hi, Mrs. Hamilton, your credit card was stolen.
How'd you get my number?"
Exactly.
Who are you? I'm calling the cops.
That's the response to everybody. We call you, try to do a public service, and they assume you're the thief.
Well, and even then, they weren't aware that there were like good people out there.
Oh, right. Because they're thinking like the internet's sort of whatever. You're trying to explain the evil, scary place of the internet.
And they're like, well, how can I trust you? Like, there was no level of trust in that invisible wall.
It had to be some other scam going on.
Oh, absolutely.
We just made this decision after getting beaten up, calling people, because it was our policy to tell everybody that their credit card had been stolen. We finally were like, this is not helping. We're enraging people and they don't believe us. We said, all right, we're not going to call people anymore. And then the business, it started off, it's very funny. Like, we set up all of our computers when there was an email. Somebody had this great idea. When there was an email, it would automate. If the email said that there was a sale, it would automate the Jerry Maguire, show me the money cash register.
Oh, gosh. That's great in the early days.
In the early days, it was great. It was like, you'd hear it, the whole office would just explode and like, show me the money, like cha-ching. It was awesome.
And like $20.
Exactly. It's like, great. That's like one of the 20 sales we'll have this month. It was like that at the beginning. Fast forward, it got to a point where like, this is cute, turn it all off. Like, we can't do that. You're like, great. Like, when there's a sale every minute, it's a very different business.
Show.
Like, I don't want to hear this stuff anymore. But it's like, things change. It was funny. It became like, it really did become a real business. And we were doing business like 180 countries around the world.
Oh my God.
It was very funny. I was like, it was like a niche business. It was like maybe smaller than knitting, however you want to describe it. But in some small world, I was incredibly well known. And so it's funny, people like at conferences, people ask me for a selfie or this kind of stuff. It's very funny. I'm like, this is great.
Somebody's got to make it.
Somebody recognized that. But the best thing ever happened. This is one of the happiest moments of the whole business. My mother was having dinner. She was in Denver with one of her friends, and my mother never understood till the day she died what we actually did. You try to explain, it's a digital marketplace. It's kind of like eBay and Amazon, and never fully understood it. But she mentioned a friend asked, and she said, oh, well, my boy started this company called Turbo Squid. And the kids were there. We're like, oh my God, your kid started Turbo Squid. They were so floored. And this is like, my mother was like, yes. It was like, finally somebody knew what
like,
we did.
You know what he does?
Oh, they're like, you know what he does and you like it? She was like, oh, this is the best. I was like, that was like the best thing that ever happened with the business. You're like, my mom's proud. Like, people know. It was like really great, So that was a nice day. It was a nice moment, but it was a small world.
Yeah. So then you exited from there.
So we exited. We had this really great deal, which was in 2011. Autodesk wanted to use. We had a marketplace software. We built it to work with anything. Autodesk wanted to use it. They paid us $26 million for that. So we paid. Everybody gave us the $5.1 million. We gave them their money back. We gave them basically. They ended up with about double their money back. We had other investors who'd come in, and then we kept a war chest. And then we were profitable. We were doing the stuff. We did a lot of work for Autodesk on the marketplace, and it was great. We started paying dividends. And so, we had people who had invested in the company around 2007 who were very supportive. The crash happens. They helped us out. They converted their money into stock, but they ended up there's some people within 3 or 4 years had double their money back. And then we started paying dividends. So we're paying 20% dividends a year.
Wow.
So people put $100,000 in, had twice their money, and then they were getting $20,000. So they're getting $5,000 checks every quarter from us. They're like, this is the best investment I ever made in my life. Like, I'm getting money.
Incredible.
And I'm like, and you still own the same percentage of the company you owned when you invested. We're just paying out this money. They're like, you can do this, Matt, forever. But we had a venture investor, the most patient, like really just Advantage Capital Partners. They have offices in Louisiana, incredibly patient. And they were basically like we're in this grow the business. They wanted to grow it, wanted to make it as big as it could be. But the way venture capital works is it's not you send out checks for the rest of your life to all the partners.
It's a cycle. You exit.
Exactly. You need to exit.
Yeah.
So things are going really well for the company. COVID happens, of all things, our revenue spikes. Like we're preparing for layoffs, and then the revenue goes way up because everybody's at home and they're making graphics. They're like, now we know the company's going to sell now. And they're like, all right, Matt, are you ready? And like, I didn't want to sell the company, and I learned a lot of things. One of the things you learn is people only want to buy the company when you don't want to sell it.
Of course.
Right? It makes sense.
That's when it's enticing.
It's when it's enticing. You're like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to put it up for adoption. Like, but that's the only time when you're like, I really want to sell the company. Everybody's like, no way, man. I don't want that dog of a company.
They don't want something that's trying to be given away. They want something that's trying to be kept.
Yes. Everybody feels the scarcity. It's the whole thing. It's like playing coy if you're dating, like, oh, I didn't notice, whatever. It's the same kind of thing. Like, people don't like nice companies. They want companies that they're trying to, they want companies that are rare and hard to find. It's so ridiculous. But so the revenue's going great. It's growing through COVID. We're having this great year. I felt so bad for like everybody else. The people are having a really hard year in 2020, but we knew it would sell. So we hired an investment banker, which is like a realtor. Like, home is a big purchase. So they're specialists for the transactions. And a company is an even crazier transaction. It's like you've like 20 realtors. It's like 10 on each side arguing about what it's really worth.
Every specific deal point.
Yes, exactly. All the deal points, and people are like, there's drama everywhere. This is all going on. But so then we sold the company. ended up getting 75 million for that. So ultimately our goal had been to hit 100 million for the shareholders, which we did. And then we sold the company. And then afterwards, basically the new owners, like they didn't have experience running the business. Their original founder had stopped running the business, and it was very tough. So I wanted to stay. I didn't want to leave. I loved the team, but it was impossible for me to stay. I had no authority. I couldn't do anything. And for a hot minute, I debated running an experiment, which was to see if I just answered instant messages, like if I just answered Slack and email promptly and did no work. I was curious, how long can you actually survive in a 1,000-person company if you do no work at all? And I was like, that's not me. So I just quit. It's like I didn't have anything. I was paid my share of it all at once.
Yeah.
So I quit. And then the thing is, you think about the window, there was a spike in the stock market in COVID for 15 months. Everybody had money. People were flush with all that cash. They started buying all these companies. And then basically in around, April of 22. So people started buying in late 2020 by like April, and certainly by May, but April of 2022, the cash machines were over. Inflation was spiking. They raised the interest rates and we all went in. There was another crash in the economy. And that window was the only window we were going to be able to sell the company. Because what happened is that shortly after that, AI came in and started making things and started generating images. ChatGPT comes out in November. And it turns out, like, had we not had our lead VC saying, really, you promised us you'd sell, and they waited a long time, they were great about that. We sold. Had we not, well, you'd have to wait for the next cycle where there's a lot of money, and then people start buying because they got a lot of money and they're burning a hole in their pocket.
Yeah.
Well, that was never coming. AI was coming anyway. And so they've come after the business. So all of a sudden, like that whole line of work, it's AI's taking over. It's already like, you don't need the expensive computers to process like 3D imagery anymore. Like the AI can just make videos. They don't need you.
They do everything that you need. And even on a simplistic form in doing house design, right?
Oh, right.
Like we were sitting there and I had a picture of like a closet and I said, design this into XYZ. And it did it. And I'm sitting at my parents' kitchen table and they're like, oh, so what are you going to do with this room? And I'm like, well, let me show you. And so I drop it in. I say, change the floors to wood, do this. And like, I give it this simple prompt.
Yeah.
And then it spits out this image. My dad was like, this is ridiculous. He's like, this is ridiculous.
This is ridiculous.
The fact that you could do this, he's like, back in the day, we used to bring out pen and paper and draw out what we wanted. He's like, and you can just, in a matter of 45 seconds, you can see exactly what it's going to be like.
Yeah, walked in the snow uphill both ways. The whole thing. It turns out it's like, no. And I'm like, it's been replaced by now you can actually dream and anybody can dream.
Right. And I'm like, this gives us ideas. We'll put in, we've got these dimensions. What can we do with it? And then you're receiving different prompts that it's pulling from everywhere it's pulling. And again, this is just like the surface.
It's the surface. It's
the
beautiful.
surface.
I wish I've done that too. And it was like, wow, the AI's kind of got taste here. Yeah. I'm shocked.
The images are tricky.
It's not clear if you actually can buy on the market some of the stuff. It doesn't necessarily exist.
It doesn't. Well, that's the thing.
Right.
It's we're using it for conceptual ideas of, okay, how do we source this? How do we do this? But yeah, when you start getting very specific and having to do like change the images and all this and that, then it's like you get like 6 prompts deep.
Yeah.
And then it becomes just AI.
It's starting to break. Yeah, exactly.
Then it breaks.
It's like, it doesn't get there. But they're
okay.
But they're moving further and further in how well it can do that. And so for me, that was sort of the end of my career. Because it's like, oh, wait, all the digital media, all this stuff, well, the AI is just going to generate it. Mm-hmm. Like, do you need to pay a subscription to go to the New York Times to find out how to make a gazpacho or whatever recipe? Or do you just ask the AI, how do I make a gazpacho? And it's like, hey, it knows and it answers it. So like all of a sudden, like the idea of intellectual property on the internet, like it's not that it was going to get pirated into oblivion.
It's going to get recreated.
Yeah. It turns out like they created an intelligence that was going to learn how to do everything. And it can just, it's not unlike humans. I mean, one of the craziest things about all of the AI is people in the 40s, there were so many people that were so smart. They figured out the idea of how the brain worked with neurons and neural nets. They knew this back 80 years ago, but we didn't have the computing power.
Yeah.
And we ended up with a different type of computing that was very predictable and it worked a certain way and it moved us forward. And now the AI is learning like humans learn and it can do that. So it turns out that for our world, like not only, we thought 3D would it would be the last to fall or the last to really do this, because you can now, like, if I want a photo, sometimes I'll go find a stock photo or I'll take a photo. But honestly, if I'm in a presentation, I want the photo with what I want, and I want it in about the next 10 seconds. I don't want to search through.
Our attention span our patience is gone.
Well, this is the thing and is that a good or a bad thing? I'm trying to figure this out, because you could argue like, it's like, get to the meat of the matter. But on the other hand, like, sometimes I like the conversation. I like sitting around talking. Everything doesn't need to be bullet points,
Yeah. I think what it's done is it's kind of a pro and a con, right? It's allowed us to be more efficient with our time. But what it's done is it's created this wider net for better and for worse. And so the wider the net is, yes, you're getting to so many more things.
Right.
But what we will never be able to solve for is the time element.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can still be super efficient and get 100 things done, but you're like halfway baking these 100 things. Even if you assign assignments to other people, it's okay, well, you still have this main parameter of an hour's an hour.
Right. You're moving where the bottleneck is too. Like, you can generate some of the work, but now it's like, well, okay, instead of doing one idea, I'm going to do 5 ideas. Oh wait, you just run into the next.
Yeah, and then it becomes the human limiter. How much can your human brain handle across the wide stack? Well, so you can have 100 different projects going, but if you don't have the time to then provide input on the 100 different projects,
you end up with the same outcome. So I'm curious, like, compared to a year ago, I don't know how much you use AI, but compared to a year ago, how much more productive do you feel like you are in terms of your output than, say,
with the use of AI specifically?
Yeah. I mean, just in your general work life, because you can use AI to red flag a financial statement, or you can do this kind of stuff. Like, where do you think you are? So
I think the use of that will continuously grow. There's still the element of security.
Right.
Because once it's there, it's out there, right? Yeah. And so running confidential financial stuff through it's still, we're not there yet, right?
Yeah.
Even on a closed system.
Right.
So now other software is adapting with AI. So for example, Intuit using their QuickBooks Online AI, custom auto filtering and auto categorizing expenses, for example. That's great. That has sped up dramatically. Having your bank feeds come in and it knowing, okay, you've bought from Amazon so many times, you generally code it to here. Right. Is this right or wrong? Great. Select these 12 things and press add, and it'll spit it wherever it needs to go, instead of having, I have to manually type all this in.
Yeah.
I have to manually add all this in. And so that element greatly has increased efficiency.
Right.
But there's still room for improvement there as well. But it's also, the reports are now a lot easier to generate, and now they're a lot better to tweak. So the software is developing, and then their internal technology is continuously growing.
Yeah. So, I'm experiencing it slightly differently, but that's like one of the ways I think it's coming out. I'd say I'm 10 times faster on some tasks.
Yes.
Right. But me, net, and since like December of last year, I'm probably 3 times as productive. But it turns out, like, taking your poor little brain and going from 1x of me to 2x of me to 3x, it's a lot of stuff moving. And so,
it's like 1, 2, 3xing your physical body every day.
Yes. And I'm
running 1 mile one day, then 3, then 6, then 9. Like,
it's taxing.
You're physically can't keep up. You're the limiter now. It's like we become the limiters.
The big theory is that, like, people have this argument, like, is the one person $1 billion company, is it already in existence? Some people believe strongly that it's in existence. Some people counter with that, and they're like, the actual thing is, when is the 0 person $1 billion company, when the AI could just run the company, all of it? But so a lot of things still have to happen. But if you start a company, you're taking investors and you're doing all this stuff, well, I mean, what's great is I have like a junior attorney that I can bug anytime, day or night, to find out how to do stuff. But then I ask a question and it's like, no, Matt, you can't do that.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, hold on. Well, why? And then I'm like way into the weeds learning about how all this stuff works.
Mm-hmm.
So before I would have spent a long time going back and forth. Now I have to learn why it is that I'm being dumb, and then go through all that and then try and make the right choice. And then I'll work with the attorneys to make sure that I get the right outcome and we do it right and we button it down.
So you still have that final step.
You still have the final step. And this is the whole thing. Like, what is the human in the loop? Like, there's certain cases, So, my oldest kid is 26. She's in AI. And so I've been learning about this stuff since before ChatGPT came out. And she used to, back when you have to use software to get a prompt answered, it was like a party trick. I'd send her things. I was with somebody who was trying to make a political figure who wanted to make a toast at a wedding. And this is before GPT came out. This is a year before that. And I'm like, sending it out, it's sending out responses, and people didn't believe me that it was actually like, here's a toast that you can say about this. People didn't believe that was really coming out of a computer, of a machine.
Yeah.
So I've been at this for a long. It's getting better and better, but it's like one of the things was with all of her friends, and it was a very interesting experience. It doesn't happen to adults in our world very often. Where I was in this room and I was like, wait, I'm the dumbest person in this whole room of 20 people. Like you're an adult. It doesn't happen all that often. We're like, wow, I'm actually clearly the dumbest person here. But I started talking to everybody about, they're all at AI. It was like everybody's at all the major companies, OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, DeepMind, all of that stuff. And they said, here's the way this is going to work. Should a human be in the loop? They said, what is absolutely inevitable based on what we're seeing is that we're going to run tests and we're going to find out that the human in the loop underperforms compared to a human out of the loop. It's just a matter of time. So like right now, we want a human in the loop to make sure things don't go wrong. But sooner or later, we're going to find out that means that like an extra 10 people are going to die a year. And they're going to quantify it. And then we're going to be in a different problem, which is you're now actually making more mistakes with the human in the loop. We're not there yet. And I don't trust the AI at that level. And there's certain places we should never, I don't know if you saw the 1980s movie War Games. We should never give a computer control of the nuclear arsenal.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't know if you all saw that movie. You seen it recently?
Not recently.
Okay. So the thing that's so crazy, and I saw it when it came out in the theater, is it was this idea completely preposterous that the computer, that the nuclear missiles would be run by AI. And in the end, the climax of the movie, sorry for all the listeners, the climax of the movie is it starts playing tic-tac-toe to learn. And then it figures out like, oh, wait, this is a solved game. Like there's no way to really win it if you know it. And then it starts playing global thermonuclear war, where it's simulating the U.S. and the USSR launching missiles at each other. And it runs it and it faster and faster and faster and faster. And it finally figures out like the game always ends up with the same outcome. And so the resolution of the movie is that the AI has learned by running the simulation over and over and over again that it shouldn't actually launch a nuclear war, and it turns off the attack it had been planning. That's the whole movie. Now, I thought it was utterly ridiculous. It turns out it's exactly right. Like literally, they taught the AI, it learned how to play tic-tac-toe, and they also, like chess was an easier game. The Asian game Go, that's like the hardest game in the world with the most possible moves. They actually had it, they first taught it how to play Go by like explaining some of the rules, and it run into training data like the early AIs when they're doing the LLMs like what we have now, they learned how to play chess, and people theorized it was because like the New York Times was publishing chess games every day. So they had every chess game that anybody had ever published. Now the AI didn't know why when king moves, king moves to here or rook moves to here, what the next move should be, but they'd seen all this stuff in the papers. And so if you said to it, well, king moved here and this is what the board looked like, it would just guess the next move based on what it thought was likely based on having just scanned through every newspaper in the history of the world. But it sort of learned that way. But then they started running it over and over and over again. And it taught itself how to play all these games. And it like without training became better than the best human player at Go, which is the hardest game in the world. People didn't think it would ever happen in the history of humanity. They thought that was a barrier we wouldn't cross, and it blew by. And so it turns out this movie that was like this 80s sort of melodramatic kind of thing turns out to be exactly how AI would work. And I definitely don't support giving control of our, we need a human in the loop for all these things. But for some things, it's great and will be more productive. So it's like we're all like in this learning space. It's incredibly exciting and terrifying.
Welcome to the brand new Falaya mobile app. We took all the same tech that's helped hundreds of people sell their homes themselves and packed it into an easy-to-use app for your phone. When you download the Falaya mobile app on either the Apple or Android App Store, you'll immediately be able to see the power of this game-changing tool. From the seller's dashboard, you can navigate to all the information that you need. We intentionally separated everything into key groups, such as tasks to be completed, buyer leads for your listing, and contact information for everyone involved through closing. When you get an offer on your property, you can simply review and respond all within the app. No matter where you are in the world, you'll be able to monitor everything that's going on with your property from listed to sold. It's truly the power of Falaya in the palm of your hand. Download the app and see for yourself. Falaya, it's real estate reimagined.
All at the same time.
Yeah. I'm glad to live in the human world. I mean, honestly, I think this is the whole thing. So there's a lot of like talk about AI, about like, well, what'll happen if AI can do all these different things? Like, how will people find value? And because I went through essentially a retirement, an accidental retirement, I hadn't really wanted to retire. It turns out there's a whole group of people who figured out how this works. They're called the retirees. And while their health is good, they're happier than the rest of us. There is an answer. They have figured out how to not work and feel really good about life.
And enjoy it.
You find a bunch of hobbies. The first ones don't work out, but you find the ones you like, and then that's it. You're with your friends, you do your hobbies. Like, that's an okay answer. It's like, what happens between here and there? And so I'm at the point of like, okay, well, my career was gone. I saw the AI coming and it's moving fast, like what it can do and how fast it's moving. We haven't experienced it as people, we're not used to these exponential curves. The only one that I remember in our lives is COVID, where it was moving so fast. It was doubling every so many days. And all of a sudden it's like, it's everywhere, right?
Yeah.
That's the only one we experienced where it was moving that quickly. And this is moving slower than COVID, but much faster than anything we've ever seen. It's like 10x a year. I think COVID was like doubling every 14 days or something like that.
Yeah, something crazy. It's
something
like
crazy.
That game called Infection.
Oh, yeah. It moving super fast. So now the AI is moving at this rate that nobody can really predict. But so for me, I was always playing with it, wanting to work with it, but it's the sideline. I was just trying to help New Orleans. We had $1 billion of Katrina money we were spending on the roads. Everything was kind of torn up. And I'm like, well, how do we figure out what's going on? When will my street be fixed? What's going on? A lot of them were opened up and it seemed like they would be abandoned. Well, sometimes that's because they're waiting to find out what's underneath the road to surface so they can figure out what they really have to fix. And they don't like bury the problems. They can do repairs, but nobody knows what's happening. So I was like, okay, let's do that. Start writing software. I started hiring people to go out and visit potholes and take photos and what's really broken, what's happened in our infrastructure. And a big problem is like the city doesn't have, and most cities don't have like good measurement. So my standard thing I think about, New Orleans spent $1 billion on the streets. And I ask people, are they better than they were before you spent the $1 billion? And honestly, it's a split decision. It's like a third are like, nope. A third are like, I'm not sure. And a third are like, yeah, nobody has any idea. We had the luck to have $1 billion to spend and we spent it. The feds, it had taken so long to get the regulations right that we were at risk of losing $1 billion just unspent. So much better to spend the $1 billion than just have none.
Yeah, at least get it out there.
We got it out there. We got it working and it helped the economy. It did all these things. I think the roads are better, but we don't know. And, the answer is if you're running a city, we should know whether or not $1 billion has an impact. That's a good thing to know.
You would hope that at least, $1 billion threshold, you would be able to know where that impact was made.
Where is it? Let's after the roads, we could measure the roads before or after. We could pick different projects. We could say there's so many ways to do it, but we didn't have that plan in place and we don't know. So what did we get? So the citizens, unlike, if you could tell everybody, a lot of it's perception. If you could tell everybody there are 40% less potholes than there were 5 years ago. We have crime stats, right? Because they spend a lot of time on that. So we know the crime's down. We know a lot of other stuff. We have no idea what the state of the infrastructure is. I mean, not really.
Yeah.
So you got to build that up. But so for me, I'm going to see the potholes. I'm trying to get real answers to figure out what's happening. And I'm using software. And it turns out it's so complicated to understand. Well, the history of a pothole appears in all these different systems. What's really been going on? It's very tough to find that answer because it's written up. It's in technical language. I don't really understand what it's saying. I'm trying to piece it together to explain to a regular person in one paragraph what's going on here. Well, if you try and explain to them about there's so many different words you won't understand if somebody's doing that. Like writing software in the old way won't help. But you can tell AI, here's what all the technical terms mean. Here's the actual description in, civil engineering ease, which, I'm sure your wife she could decipher all the stuff, but the average citizen can't. The AI could write it out very concisely and understand it. And if you didn't understand something, you could just add a line to it that says, hey, when it says this is what it means. Mm-hmm. And boom. Now it can actually answer the question succinctly. So that was a shift. So we're doing it as a nonprofit, but the problem is I wanted to work in AI. We're like, it's clearly the answer to solving all this complexity in the government is using AI to understand it. It's trained to understand it. You can add in all your local peculiarities into the AI that you're doing, and then that'll spread through the whole system. It's the perfect answer for trying to help government move forward. So started a for-profit, always intended to be AI from birth, for-profit, hired people who I'd worked with from Turbo Squid, who, on the one hand, I'm like, hey, what do you think about just coming to work for this foundation doing potholes for, whatever, with no stock or no equity? I got turned down by a lot of people.
I'm shocked.
Shocked. I was shocked. It just tells you how naive I am at times. You're like, but it's helping the people. Like, yeah. Like, I got a family, man,
Yeah. I got mouths to feed.
I got mouths to feed. I got to have some vision. I got a hope and dream. So anyway, set up as a for-profit company to do AI, hire people on. They have ownership in the company. We raised funding. We raised $2 million this summer. We've got a lot of people who are sorry that they didn't invest in the company, that are asking, or that they were too late. There's more people that want to invest. We could do that. But it's really the perfect vehicle to try and move government, I think, society sort of broadly forward. So that's how we get to civilized AI, is just this idea of like, how do we make the world easier to live in? How do we actually take care of stuff? How do we figure out what's broken? How do we communicate with each other? It's really trying to be kind of a network of everybody trying to make things better to be able to do that. And the government has the most money. This is the thing. Like, I didn't really understand how much more money it had than everybody, but like in New Orleans, I'll use New Orleans as a basic example. The budget was $1.8 billion, more or less. It's less this year. That's a big whole thing in the news, but it's about $1.8 billion, which is about $4,500 per year per citizen. Okay. So you've got money. We're spending it. And the $1.8 billion, philanthropy itself might be 50 million to 100 million or something like that. It's maybe 5%. Like, philanthropy is good, but it will not move the needle compared to multi-billion-dollar, almost $2 billion spend, right? So the answer is, at the end of the day, the government has to spend that money effectively. That's where all the leverage is. That's what's got to happen. So how do you help it? Well, part of it's figuring out what's really going on, what's really broken, how do we communicate? Ultimately, we want to get to the point, we need to read the contracts. What's in the contracts? How much do we pay? What did other people pay for asphalt? What do we pay? What's going on? Like, you need to analyze all that stuff to get more effective. And so at the $4,500 per citizen, the other thing that's really fascinating is I like to do math. You divide it out. There's 2,000 work hours in a year, 50 weeks a year. If you assume somebody's working 50 weeks, 40 hours a week, that's 2,000 hours. We'll divide it out. It means the city's spending $900,000 an hour to make life better for the citizens, or $15,000 a minute. Do you feel that? The answer is I don't. Honestly, I think we would be getting more than $900,000 an hour worth during the workday. And so San Francisco's spending, I think, $16,000 or $18,000 per citizen, and they're spending millions per work hour. Like, they're spending like $60,000 a minute. Their city's not in good shape. Why? And you start looking at this stuff. One of the craziest data points is that New York, to build a mile of subway in New York compared to Paris, let me ask you, like, I'm teeing it up so you know the answers, part of the direction of the answer, but like, how much would you think in Paris, where they've got more social, more leftist, more socialist leaning, more unions, more stuff, like, how much would you think a mile of subway costs in Paris compared to New York?
I have no idea. I don't even begin to guess how much a mile of subway costs.
It's not now. Again, you're a civil engineer in the family, so you can get that answer.
Subway,
but
$10 or $15 million.
Oh well, not in the actual cost, the relative cost.
The percentage.
Yeah, to build in New York, what does it cost to build a mile of subway by percentage compared to Paris? Just offhand, what would you expect?
Twice as much.
Yeah, it's 10x. It's 10x. So this
to build a mile of subway in New York
is 10 times what it costs in Paris.
Compared to Paris.
Which has historical artifacts they run into. There's all kind of problems. They're able to do it efficiently. They build all the subway. They have great public transportation. We spend more money and have less. And so this is that problem. Like, this is not a political ideology. We have the money. We have more money to spend in America than any other country in the world. And we're getting less than all of these other countries. And so the politicians, which, by the way, they like to complain about everybody else, about the billionaires, all this other stuff, but the politicians are the one who have all the money. And by the way, we complain about the influence of billionaires, it's the billionaires that are influencing them. They're the ones giving them the money. The politicians are blaming everybody else. But the answer is we have the money. And when we're getting 1/10 the effectiveness of what they get in France when they're doing the subway, this isn't a question of whether we raise the max tax rate from 38% to 42%.
That's how we spend the tax rate.
That's how do we spend what we have. If we increase, so if we have, if we increase the tax rate by 10%, we'll still only get a fraction. We only get 20% of the subway. If we double the taxes, we'll get 20% of the subways that France builds. Yeah. If we double our taxes, we don't have a tax problem. Maybe it could be more efficient. Maybe some people should pay more, but it's not a problem of taxing. It's how we spend it. And everything comes back down to the government has the money and it's spending it. So how do you get the value for the money that we deserve? And this isn't an authoritarian or like a political question. The authoritarians in China, such as you want to view China, but they build a lot. And they have, what is it? It's like, I think, 3,000 miles of high-speed rail. And Europe has something like 3,000 miles of high-speed rail. And it doesn't matter whether you do it from a one-party system that's more authoritarian or from like to the right or from a left sort of oriented continent with Europe where it's more socialist and it has more unions and more labor laws and all that. Like both of them have built all this. Where's our high-speed rail? We have none. We have like 0 miles. Amtrak is like, I forget, it averages like 90 miles per hour. And in China going around, you're going 300 kilometers an hour. That's fast. It's like whatever it is, 186 miles per hour, some large number. Jesus. And they've got it all over. So you don't get on a plane. You just take a super fast train. It's very easy. It's comfortable. But so we're trying to build this in California. We haven't built a mile of it yet. We spend all this money. We're not building it. Why are we not able to build it? So you've got to wind back all the way to understand what's happening in the government. We have the money to have the nice things, but why don't we have nice things? That's really what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
How do we communicate well? We don't communicate well with the citizens. We don't talk to them well. We don't explain what's going on. We don't set their expectations. Some people try, but it gets lost. I call this the orphan knowledge. You try and talk to people. You say that, but if you go to one neighborhood group and you drop all the knowledge and tell them what's going on, but well, who wrote that down? And how can anybody else find it? So part of what Civilized does is like, well, send us an email. If you're one of the groups that we work with, send us an email. We'll grab it. We'll stick that knowledge in our knowledge base, and then anybody can ask that question. So this is part of how the idea is like the community building stuff up. The government can answer a question once, put it in there, and then everybody else who wants to ask a question can see it. And by the way, all these other people, we can share the knowledge. The government for Civilized, when we have a community site with New Orleans in there. We have the DAs and the police and all the other agencies, and you can ask a question. But like, we want you to be able to ask any question. The city of New Orleans can see, they want to log in, they can see what's popular, what are people asking about, and what are we not able to answer? Okay, if we can't answer the question, part of what Civilized do, we'll write up a draft. This is one possible answer. We fact checked it. Do you like it? Edit it, put it out. But if you put it out, every single other person within 1 minute, everybody else can see it. And if you can set up so the people working at 311 can get their answer, they can look it up. Or if it's around social services, there are a lot of questions that came up about SNAP and supplemental nutritional assistance when the government shut down. There were people in hard spots and they're trying to find out, this is a popular question. What's the answer? Well, you can answer that through Civilized, and everybody can see it within 60 seconds all the way through, no matter where they're coming at the information.
Yeah.
So some of that's like, start with the communication. What are we doing? What are we doing? Let people know, try and set their expectations. You know, New Orleans is it's an odd place in a lot of ways, which is, I think if people in the government, some people have been worried about whether or not we will actually post how much work gets done, that they're going to get criticized. They're tired of being criticized. They've been beaten up in the press repeatedly, and they're like, we're going to get criticized. But a lot of the citizens think that zero work gets done.
So if you show them just that some work
show
gets
30%, 50% people, I tell people, I'm like, No, actual work gets done. People are flabbergasted at the idea. And it's like a little bit like everybody needs to lift their spirits. There's something really magical about New Orleans and Louisiana and all these cities. Like we don't need to not beat ourselves up so much. But if they actually found out what was happening, you said, hey, look, we're going to fix that pothole. It might take us 300 days, but at least it's going to be 300 days. And by the way, there's 1,000 ahead of it that are really bad. People can deal with that with knowing. But if they don't know, they can't deal with it. I learned this very early on in our first company. We were talking about the funding and the 5 million, but there was a real chance that we were going to run out of money. And we had enough payroll this day. We're waiting to find out if we live or die. And this is in 2001. We had enough payroll to pay the day's payroll, the one in 2 weeks, and the one after that. So today's payroll and 2 more payrolls. And there's a big fight among the founders. And 2 of the founders that were there that ultimately left the company, I'll leave them alone, were advocating strongly not to tell any of the staff where we stood. My brother and I said, look, we hired our friends. So like, these are people we trust, and they trusted us. And so we're going to tell them how much money we have. So we went out, we had a company meeting, we said, all right, everybody, here's the deal. We've got enough money to make payroll today. And then we've got enough to make the next, 4 weeks of payroll. And somebody screamed out, we have that much money? I didn't know. Right? They were totally surprised, right? Yeah. They were waiting for us to say we had no payroll. We had no money and we skipped payroll and you're not even getting paid for what you did. So then we interviewed everybody. Half the staff said they keep on working as long as we had a chance. They might have to do job interviews, but they keep working as long as we had a chance to get funding. They would work indefinitely while that was going on. And the other half were like, I've got to get a job immediately. And it turned out we got the investment. We never had any payroll problems at all. And nobody quit. Nobody left. And we learned this really intense lesson, which is in a void, people put their worst fears in, right? But compared to the truth, which is you actually do have payrolls coming and we do have a chance of it. And here's where you really stand. That people can deal with. But if you let them put their wildest concerns, the things they're worried about, they'll fill it with the things.
It's dangerous.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. It's a great way of putting it. It's dangerous. And they process it as fear. So for the city of New Orleans, you're like, is it ever going to be fixed? Well, it's like, I'd rather know it's going to be fixed in 300 days than never. Now it just feels like you're screaming into a system that doesn't care. It's going to get lost. It doesn't happen. But like Boston, here's a different level of service. In Boston, they have 48 hours. That's their limit for fixing a pothole. 48 hours. And they said it when they create I've seen the data. They gave us access to their systems and all that. They actually have a time stamp. Like when you you say there's a pothole here, they have 48 hours to fix it. At 49 hours, it gets marked as a failure. So if they fix it in 3 days, we didn't perform. That's their metric. They didn't make the standard, right? It's hard to even imagine.
Here, yeah.
You're like, wait, the pothole might have generations.
Yeah, the pothole generations.
I swear to God, they're potholes that have a whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
I think things have evolved inside the pothole. They're a protected life form now. Yeah. Like you might kill a new animal if you fix that pothole. Like it's, it's a habitat.
Yeah, it's serious.
It's in the middle of the street, but it's a habitat. This is the reality of that. So how do you get at that? Well, it turns out, our thing is this. We've got to make it easier to work at City Hall, to work at the government. You've got to, so people know this stuff. It's fascinating. So I've been on ride-alongs. You go meet with people. They know the city. Like it's anecdotal. They're not getting the computer support they need. They're not getting the help. But people say they know the streets. Well, you ride out with them. They know this. They know this defect, like the sidewalk that's been broken. They're like, oh, I've known that since like Miss Sally told me about it 4 years ago. It's still here. She moved out. The next person, like they know the whole history of all these problems that are in the infrastructure. But there's no prioritization. Well, which should be fixed? How long is it going to take to fix it? Well, they're getting no help with that.
Yeah.
And so this is like the real problem is like, well, if you actually could tell the residents, this is when it's going to be fixed and the people who are working get all the support and we're optimizing the stuff. That's what AI is great for. So we're just trying to move that in a piece at a time, starting with communication. How do you talk to people? And look, this is the reality of the world. Like in New Orleans right now, if something is broken, like there are different responses. It can be very cryptic. You don't know, the city workers doing the technical stuff is not trained to be a communicator. They're not professional communicators.
Yeah.
They're good at reading like why something is broken. But if you report an abandoned car, this is my favorite thing. The city will send back, they'll send back a one-word email. It'll say chalked or Goa, right? And that's it in the email. I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean? Do you know what these mean?
I have no idea what this means.
Okay. So,
and I've heard this presentation before. And I don't know what this means.
Okay. So you heard me talking about Civilized before. Exactly. Well, so what chalked is chalk means that we've marked the tire, and there's a whole policy around this, which means in 7 more days, if the car doesn't move, we're going to put a sticker that's really nasty on the window that makes you sort of punishes you. You get stickered, and after 7 more days of that, in theory, they'll tow it. Great. But you should just tell, and we're trying to do this. So it's like, well, it says chalked, like we're trying to do that. We tell somebody, that's what that means. Or Goa means gone on arrival. It wasn't there. The car's gone. Like, it's not a problem. But so you just get a thing saying your request was closed, Goa. Well, okay, fine. The Sewage and Water Board will send a thing. If it's a leak, that's the Sewage and Water Board's problem. You'll get an email saying it's closed. Talk to the Sewage and Water Board, find out the status with using 52 water. Now, what's 52-water?
Phone number?
It's a phone number.
Okay.
It's a 7-digit phone number, but the 52-water is a little confusing. And by the way, why don't you just tell me what the 7 digits are? Because my phone won't dial it. And by the way, you just put the full phone number in there. So our Civilized, it says, hey, you should call the Sewage and Water Department, and here's the full number to dial. And it'll be linked appropriately. If you get the email, you can tap it
on your phone. Yeah.
But this is the kind of thing where it's like, okay, well, who takes care of those details? Well, the people who are dealing with this stuff, they shouldn't have to write really nice, friendly, like ambassador, diplomatic emails. They should actually just say what the problem is. Go is the right thing for them to say.
Mm-hmm.
It just needs to be explained to somebody. Like, hey, we came out. Here's a photo. The car's not there. Like, it's not a problem. Let us know. Like, that's great.
Yeah. But have a system that they input Goa, and it has this drafted email.
Well, it's the AI drafted on the fly.
That's what I'm saying. So you go up to the car and you type in, here's a picture, Goa, and the system knows, great, and then it types up this really nice professional email and says, please see the picture. If you have a different experience or whatever reason, reply back, and we'll try to coordinate a better update.
Exactly, which is a home run. And so we're actually doing the work.
Yeah.
We went out, we looked, the car wasn't there, we did that, but we didn't claim the victory where somebody says, thanks.
Yeah.
And by the way, if they say thanks, it's not going to come back to the person who did the work. There's no way to give that person a gold star and say, thanks for actually getting out there within 24 hours and checking out this car.
Yeah.
Like, they just get a thankless job. So like, we've got to improve this whole thing so people feel like a nice, kind note, which, by the way, with AI, you can moderate. So if people send horrible things, we're not going to forward the horrible things. If somebody says somebody's frustrated and they say something, we're not going to let you vent frustration to somebody, but there's no reason not to forward to that person. Like, hey, thanks. I really appreciate the work you do.
Yeah.
Like, everybody wants to hear that, but we don't give them they don't get the feedback on the other side. So like, all of this stuff it can be better. The technology is just sitting here. So we're just running forward, wanting to work with all the governments. We're focused on the governments in Louisiana, the different cities, the towns. Right now, we're looking at I think it's something like 58 towns in the 20,000 population or above to try and roll out the communication. All this stuff is free. Strictly speaking, the cost of AI is dropping. To do this kind of stuff, it's dropping. The point is to actually, like, how do we move the needle forward? We'll charge for harder problems, solving harder things that are more custom and deliver that. But the communication and the basic stuff are like, get in and start actually like learning how to deal with this. So like, if you have a website, what you end up seeing is like people came and clicked on these web pages. It's not very helpful. What you see from a chat is this is actually what the person wanted.
Mm-hmm.
They came, they're trying to get this information. We weren't able to answer it. You probably ought to add a little note in our system that says that answers their question.
Yeah, help us learn to be able to provide an
exactly.
answer.
So you want the person from the city to actually be like, I'm going to answer that question, and then the next person who asks the question about it will see the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And the person who was just asking, when they ask the question, we can't answer it, we'll ask them for their email address. We'll send you the answer. If somebody ever answers this, or if somebody comes, like, we'll notify you what it was, and we'll send it to you. Like, it's not rock. I mean, it's the back end, I'm sure, is complex, but it's like on the front end, it's a simple task. Right. And you want to make it simple. So like the pitch to the people, the government workers, is just like, we want to make your life easier. Yeah. You should be able to get the job done with less work, less stress, fewer hours, do all of the work that you were intending to do. So the standard we set for ourselves, we're trying to make it take 10% of the time. So if we can do 90% improvement, great. And you can do that with the 301, where you submit if your trash can's broken, you can take a photo, submit it. We can read that the wheels are broken in the trash can, which you have to get a new trash can. You have to say what's broken. We can read that, answer it all, and you'll get a trash can the next day. Great. Very simple. Takes 10% of the time. That's what should happen. But if you also work there, you should be able to do your job not only much faster, but all the other work that you couldn't get to before, and do that and have a little bit of leisure, a little bit easier life, less stressful. Like, that's the whole thing, is we want everybody to be able to do the work and feel good about it, and everybody feel good about the cities and all the rest of this, which is back to spend the money well, get the job done, make things much better. You know, when I was looking, other cities that we're talking to, was looking, we're looking, like, one of the things in New Orleans after Hurricane Ida, the garbage pickup went from 2 times a week to 1 time a week. Well, we were looking in a city in Florida, and I saw it was like the garbage pickup was 5 days a week.
After a hurricane.
Well, not after a hurricane, but it was just 5 days a week. And I'm like, where's the bug in our software? And I went and looked it up. I was like, I need to see this page. It turns out, actually, they pick up the trash 5 days a week.
Wow.
It's like 4 weekdays and a day on the weekend. Like, this is amazing. I didn't even know this existed, but I thought it was a bug.
Produce that much trash.
Oh, well, that's the thing. I think it's like a touristy kind of area. And so, and if it's seafood and it's hot, so then they're picking up the trash all the time. That's service.
No, that makes sense.
But it was just one of those things. It was very funny that it presented as like a bug where you're like, what did we get wrong? I mean, this can't exist.
And it's like, no, it really does.
It's there. We can have that service. So how do we do it? You know, These are the kind of things that we're playing for.
Yeah. And I love to see that progression continue to happen. I know we're hard on time for you.
So, yeah.
I want to make sure we adhere to that.
No, thank you so much.
This has been extremely fascinating.
Thank you for taking the time
part 2, 3, 4. This is incredible.
Well, ultimately, we're going to really try and focus on the Baton Rouge area. We're focused on New Orleans through like January. We'll put a ton of time in, and then we'll put a ton of time in Baton Rouge in the February timeframe. I'd love to try and meet people. Like, this is the whole thing. It's like, there's a lot of nonprofits. There are a lot of people doing good work. How do we get everybody to be able to do better work?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the whole thing. So
I love it.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on. Thank you, everybody else, for listening. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you all.